A little bit lost in today is the fact that whistleblowers, and that is, of course, as we've now learned, is a term of art that has, as a part of it, confidentiality and the guarantee of protections. Whistleblowers often come to congressional committees first before they have done the rest of their due diligence. The attacks on Schiff, underway and already relentless. I guess what I want to know from you is, do you think they'll ever reach such a level as to really hamper his task, which, of course, I'm sure is the president's goal?
Yeah, there's something about Adam Schiff that has clearly got under the president's skin. He seems to viscerally dislike him, and he also has decided that he's a convenient target, perhaps more useful to him politically than Nancy Pelosi. Perhaps he's decided that Nancy Pelosi is not the one he wants to take after, whereas Adam Schiff is a better villain for his narrative. You know, he says, for instance, the thing he's really seized on, he repeated it today more than once, was that Adam Schiff misrepresented the nature of the call in a comment before the committee. Well, Adam Schiff said before he made this comment, this is in essence what the president was saying. He was giving an interpretation of what the president said. He made very clear it wasn't a word-for-word reading of the transcript. But then the president said that not only was it outrageous of him, it was a crime, it was treason, he should be arrested, he should resign from office for the crime of putting words in the president's mouth. And then the president himself put words in Adam Schiff's mouth. He said Adam Schiff was clearly doing this because he said, gosh, he did nothing wrong, meaning he, the president, did nothing wrong. So he put words in Adam Schiff's mouth that Adam Schiff, of course, didn't say. He does this all the time. But when somebody like Adam Schiff does it, it's a crime and should be punished by treason. That's because he needs villains. He likes to have somebody to play off of. He likes to have somebody as an adversary that he can, attack and go after, somebody to focus on, somebody to focus his own energy on and focus his supporters on. Adam Schiff happens to be his #1 choice at the moment.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.